Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our free live session brought to you by TalentSprint. And I'm excited to be here because we are talking about the biggest exam, right? SBI PO prelims. And I'm sure most of you are already taking advantage of these sessions. So if you've been part of our earlier sessions, we've started the series about 2 weeks back, right? We started off with quant, and then we had reasoning, and today is English language, of course. So you must be aware that we are conducting the All India mock exam every week, right? Over the weekend, it's scheduled to take place only on Saturday and Sunday, right? And for those of you who are still, wondering how to join, right? There's a URL which was provided earlier. All you have to do is log on to talentsprint.com/mocktest2017, and you will have access to the mock test, right? And the best part about this test, I'm sure those of you who are receiving the reports know, right? Your digital personal assistant, Tia, is giving you customized feedback on what to do and how to go about taking advantage and making sure you're beating the competition week on week. So before we move forward for today's session, let's quickly acknowledge those who are here this evening. I see Narendra, Ahmad, okay, Abhishek, Ronil, Afsar, Priya, Vikram, Sukanta Chaudhary, Sri Krishna, Snehal, Jitendra, Thalari, Priya, okay, Vidya, Kumaresan, Manish, Gaurav, Pradeep, Rahul, Abdullah, Ashish, Swati, Poonam, Purvika, Fabia, Rakesh, interesting names, Pavan, Farooq, Priyanka, Rahul, okay, and Kamal. I'm sure there are others as well. Okay, great. So great to have you guys all here this evening. And yeah, and I'm just hoping that all of you, right, have completed your application process by now. We left with what, 10 days? 11 days max, to be precise, for the last date, right, for the online application process. So hopefully all of you have completed the application process. If not, do it now, right after the session, right? Hi, some more people joining in, that's fine. So we are yet to start. Also, those of you who want to join our WhatsApp group, right, there's a number you'll have to subscribe to, 9109 44494. That's the number. I'm sure those of you already part of it can help spread the word and share it with your friends, right? And of course, you also are aware that we have a daily dose happening here till the time of your exam. So every day you're going to get some tips and strategies on preparation for this exam, right? All you need to do is just subscribe to our channel for the same. So I'm sure you're doing that as well. If you haven't done that, please do so. And I think the objective of these sessions is, of course, to focus on the weaker areas or the most challenging sections for you during the test, right, that you face. So having gone through last couple of weeks' performance, because I have the, bandwidth to take questions from the last 2 weeks. So having looked at the outcome or the result, most of y'all have struggled with reading comprehension, finding errors, of course, and double blanks, surprisingly. But so that's what I thought we'll focus on, right? Those 3 question types. Now, for the reading comprehension, I would say, thanks, Mainak. Mainak has shared the WhatsApp number. Anyway, so for reading comprehension, I think the challenge that most of us face is only to do with time, right? The problem is not even the question. The problem is our reading fluency, right? We just looking at the word count. If you look at it, there are only 2 types that you will get. You will get a short passage, 300 word count. Yes, Pavan, I agree. Or you will get a article-based long passage, which is about 950 words, right? You can expect close to 1,000 words. So just looking at the length of the passage, we panic. Because first of all, there's only 1 hour. We have 35 questions on quant, 35 questions on reasoning, and 30 questions on English. But I'm sure you guys have come up with a smart strategy by now, saying that, not necessary to answer or solve all the questions. Rohit had mentioned that as well, right? The smart thing to do is make sure at least you go through all the questions, right? Attempt it and then see, okay, what can I focus on? Let me finish what I know first, so I don't miss out on questions that I can easily score marks, and then come back and attempt the ones that I'm not too sure of, right? So that's the approach you need to take for reading comprehension. But the advantage that we have this time is because we have a lot of time, right? So you can come up with a detailed study plan with respect to reading comprehension. And the only things that I will tell you that you need to focus on is your reading fluency, right? Speed, comprehension. Now, an average reader, right, can read about 200 to 250 words per minute. In fact, if you ask me, that even an 8th standard student can do that, right? College students maybe about 450 words per minute, or average adult can read about 300 words per minute with a decent amount of comprehension, right? So I'm saying 60%, 65% comprehension. Yeah. So what you need to aim for is, imagine if you have a long passage, which is about 950 words, which means you have to be able to read the entire passage in 3 minutes, right? 250 words per minute. So that's 950 words. So we're saying at least 950 words will take at least 6 minutes, right? 650 words will take about 3 minutes. So which means if you're spending so much time just reading the passage, it's going to be a challenge. So you need to work on your speed as well as how much are you understanding out of that. So that's a different strategy that you'll need to work on when it comes to reading comprehension. Have a long-term plan, right? Maya Devi, what I would suggest is it could be a resolution problem. So just go to settings on the lower right of the video and change your resolution, right? Change it to 480 or 720 or HD. It must be in 240 or something. Just change that so you won't have problem with the video clarity, right? I wouldn't say skip, Rahul, simply because that's 10 questions. That's a lot of marks, right? The other approach that you can take is attempt the vocabulary questions first. I always keep saying this, right? Out of 10 questions, 3 questions are on synonyms, 2 questions are on antonyms. So try and see if you can finish that up first. You might be already familiar with those words, or anyway, the words are highlighted in the passage. So you can apply context clues and try and figure out what the meaning of that word is from the context, right? And thereby get some marks there. And another thing is, if you usually notice, right, the sequence of the questions, like the first 3 questions will be in and around the first 3 paragraphs. The last question, that is, let's say there are 10 questions, right? 5 questions, positive, negative detail. What is true according to the passage? What is not true according to the passage? What is the overall theme of the passage? You'll have questions like that, right? And the next 5 is vocabulary-based questions, synonyms and antonyms. So if you look at the first 5 questions before you branch off to the vocabulary questions, right? The first 3 questions will be around the first, second, third paragraph. Last question will be around, the 5th question will be around the last paragraph. But I would not advise you to fall on this strategy, but the usual pattern is that way. Yeah? Pick up any test paper and try and figure this out. So in case you're running out of time, right, you know which paragraph to go and attack for this question, right? That's another thing you can do. But like I'm saying, at the time of the examination, don't gamble with time, right? You don't have that luxury. So yes, if you are not too sure and if you feel as it is, I am pretty bad in terms of reading speed, right? My fluency is like below average, then I would suggest you kind of attempt that towards the end. But that's a different panic that you might have. 10 marks. And if you don't have time, you're going to lose out on all those 10 marks. But there again is where you play smart and answer what you know for sure, and your confident that you will get full marks in those questions, right? So reading comprehension, if you ask me, the only tip that I will leave with you is, because you have time, is to make sure you practice on your reading fluency, right? Speed comprehension. Time yourself every time. I've earlier shared some sources. You can rely on any of those sources and make sure you pick up an article with 900 words or 950 words, right? And make sure you're able to read it within a specific amount of time, right? 5 minutes, less than 5 minutes, and understand what you're reading for the most part. So yeah, how to develop good comprehension? There are lots of ways again, but reading will definitely help you, right? That's like the basic practice strategy that you can employ. Okay, so I think we can get started with today's session. Like I said, what we're going to focus on is the most challenging question types that you faced, right? Or most of you have faced. Most of you have got like really poor marks, right, in those specific question types, which is double synonyms and, I'm sorry, not double synonyms, double blanks, fill in the blanks, and finding errors. So we'll spend a little bit time on that. And yeah, as in when you have questions, you can post it and I will answer it. Okay, so let's get started. Let me share the screen. Okay, so the first question we have here is finding errors, of course. Let's read. The fraud was detected during a random check by the vigilance team at the bus. Okay, that's our question. So if you know the answer, so Tuin is like finding errors is the worst. Okay, yes, for most of us, that's one of the most challenging question types, right? So the trick is to know as many rules as possible. Be sure of, your basics, right? And even in finding errors, it's important for us to understand usages in terms of prepositions, conjunctions, tenses, etc. So most of you are coming back, and Asif says on the bus, and then Arunika Basu says in the bus, right? So let's quickly look at it. So on the bus and in the bus, that's a good thing. Maybe we can quickly discuss the difference between that too. So we understand that the error is in part 4, right? Part 4 is where the error is. We're saying let's change at to. Some of you are saying on, some of you are saying in. Now what you need to understand is the fraud was detected where? On the bus, right? One of the other strategies that you can use is to quickly ask questions. Yes, there are lots of rules, Shiva. Each question, as and when you practice finding error questions, in each question you will see there is a rule. Okay, so let's look at what the rule is in this particular question. Yes, that's exactly what I'm going to do. So now on and in, right? Both can be used for types of transport, right? Both these prepositions can be used for types of transport. The only difference, if you ask me, right? For example, on is used when the transport is the most important detail, right? So when do I use on? When the transport, in the context, if the transport takes up importance, right? If the transport is the most important detail, I will use on, right? Now, when will I use in then? I will use in when the position in the transport is the most important piece of information, right? is the most important detail. Then I use in. Let's look at an example quickly. So if I say, let's say Sonu traveled to London, right? Sonu traveled to London on the train. Of course, there's no train from here to London, but just for our example sake, right? Sonu traveled to London on the train, right? So here, the importance is the transport. How did she travel? Okay. However, in terms of position, I can say Sonu sat in the last carriage of the London train. Are you following? So here, right, the fraud was detected where? On the bus, right? Is more effective or is more appropriate. So in the context here, we're going to say on the bus. So are you following? That's pretty much the difference in terms of transport. Both can be used, but it depends on what you're stressing on in the context, right? If it's the transport itself, use on. If it's the position in the transport, then use in. As simple as that. Let's move on. So this is like a basic rule, right? This is one rule we saw for this question. Let's move on. Some of them had even transferred some money. That's our second question. Where do you think the error is? As soon as you read it, you should be able to kind of quickly figure out where the problem is. Some of them had even transferred some money. Yeah, Arunika, that's probably why I chose this question type. Most of you got it wrong. Now we all understand. Yeah, as soon as you read it, hey, except for Chowdhury and Apurba and Abu and Ravi, okay, now a lot of you are giving me other options, right? Now the error for those of the names I mentioned is actually in part 1, right? Part 1 is where the error is, right? You change some. Why? You have a clue word, the indefinite article a. We don't say some of them, right? We start with some of them. But the collocation is a few of them. Right? That's the phrase that we've heard people use in various contexts. Right? So just to give you some random examples, only a few of them came to the session or whatever. Some of these are mine. Right? You don't say some of these are mine. Incorrect. Right? So though both few and some are used, with reference to quantity, and it's used when we don't know what the specific number of nouns is, right? So you're following. So that's something that you need to keep in mind. So this is an easy one. The error is in part 1. You either say some of them had even transferred some money. Again, it's very redundant, some and some. So the right one would be a few of them. So quick difference, I'm sure you understand, right? Let's quickly take a look at that, just so that we are here on this question, and let's clarify that. So few, some, both are used in terms of quantity. When you're talking about few, you're talking about something that is small, but of course an indefinite number, right? And few is used only for countable nouns, right? few books, few pens. And a few, most of the time indicates kind of a negative meaning, right? Just for you to have a basic understanding of few and some. All this will help, especially in finding errors, right? When do I use few? When do I use some? Some again, obviously you use it for a larger number when compared to few, right? This also is indefinite, right? You can use it for both countable as well as uncountable nouns. Some people, yeah? And this one, for the most part, has a positive meaning, right? So sometimes when you're confused what to choose, you can kind of you can look at the context and decide, okay, whether the context is giving me a positive meaning or a negative meaning. Accordingly, also, I can choose the right quantifier. Right? So either ways, we have figured out that the error was in part 1. Earlier, I had shared some example sentences. Moving on. Our third context. After the accused pleaded not guilty and claimed trial, the court fixed a date for recording the statements of prosecution witness. Now, this was a pretty easy one. Yeah. So I want you to kind of take a look and quickly get back with the answers. Where do you think the error is? I'm hoping most of you got this correct, because I think out of all the questions, this was pretty much the easiest. In fact, I've collated both the weeks finding errors. There were only five questions, except for the ones that had no error. Everything else is here. Some of you are saying 2, some of you are saying 3. Right? This is an easy one because obviously when you read the sentence, you know the general tense in the context is past tense, right? What are my clue words? If you want to check that quickly, look at the action words. Pleaded, fixed, right? The only thing that is not in line, Bala, is in part 2, and Bhaskar is in part 2, right? After the accused pleaded not guilty and claimed trial, the court fixed a date for recording the statements of prosecution witness. So you know that the general tense in the context is past tense. The only verb that is not in line with past tense is in part 2. So error is in part 2. You just change claim to claimed. That's it. Right? So when it comes to tense errors, this is something that you can quickly look at. Kumaresan, right? See if the verbs are in line with what the context is trying to say. But of course, the exception is if there are 2 actions in the past, you know, one could be just simple past tense and the other one could be past perfect tense. That's something you need to understand with the meaning that the context is conveying. Let's move on. There are not many instances in the world apart from Nepal and India, whereas the relationship between 2 countries could be described as that between lips and teeth. So where do you think, as soon as you read the sentence again, sometimes, you know, it's easier for people who have the habit of reading to spot errors quickly. Why? Because they are just familiar with sentence constructions, right? They are applying logic in terms of context, right? So it's easier to spot the error. So Kirti says, I think there's no error. A couple of you are coming back and saying 4 and 2. So let's look at where the error is actually for this one. So if you look at this context, right, let's quickly break it down just for the benefit of those who are getting the answers wrong. So there are not many instances in the world apart from Nepal and India, right? And then you have this connector, the conjunction, right? And then I have the relationship between two countries could be described as that between lips and teeth, right? This is the second part of the context. So for me, it's almost like, there's a main clause and there's a subordinate clause, right? So what do I mean by that? Either of these need a good connector or a conjunction to connect them to make sense, right? If I say the relationship between two countries could be described as that between lips and teeth, which countries are we talking about, right? So this second part is dependent on the first part, right? And is whereas the right connector there is the question. That's what you need to ask, right? If I say whereas, what's the meaning of whereas? When will you use whereas? Mostly to bring in contrast, right? It means on the other hand. Is that the meaning that I need in the context? It should be your question, right? If I say Ajay likes to go swimming, whereas Savita likes to sail, right? So Ajay likes to go swimming, but on the other hand, Savita likes to sail. So this is not the meaning that the context needs, right? There are not many instances in the world apart from Nepal and India, not whereas, but where, right? Where. So we understand that the right conjunction or connector here should be where, bringing in the right meaning. Where the relationship between these two countries could be described as that between lips and teeth. So it's important for us to understand, is this the right connector? So remember, where is a subordinating conjunction, obviously, right? Connecting a main clause to a subordinate clause. I'm sure, so these are basics that you need to know. That's what I said in finding errors. If you're familiar with basic topics like clauses, understanding conjunctions, you'll immediately be able to spot the error. Contradictory means bringing in contrast meaning, right? I just gave you an example sentence. Ajay likes to go swimming, but Savita doesn't have the same interest. So this here is bringing in that contrast or contradictory meaning, right? Just to give you another example. Keeping dangerous substances out of reach is important where children are concerned, right? So with where, so what you're basically saying is this children are concerned is the dependent clause. I need this to connect to the main clause. The main clause is keeping dangerous substances out of reach is important, right? I understand that a clause is a complete thought. Keeping dangerous substances out of reach is important. That's a complete thought. But this children are concerned is a dependent clause. Children are concerned about what? Regarding what? About what? So this where the conjunction, subordinating conjunction, connects this dependent clause to this main clause. Now it makes sense. Keeping dangerous substances out of reach is important. It cannot be whereas, it has to be where children are concerned, right? Just to give you the meaning, it's the same meaning. Where has the same meaning in both these contexts, our given context in the test and the example sentence that I've shared. Now let's move on. So error was in part 2 here, change whereas to where. Next one, to the right balance of fiscal policy measures and sustained economic reforms, India has potential to emerge as a global leader of growth, innovation and productivity. Ashish, it will be uploaded for you on YouTube. You can watch it later. Yeah. Anyway, our next context. So it's also important for us to quickly understand the meaning that the context is giving, right? To the right balance of fiscal policy measures and sustained economic reforms, India has the potential to emerge as a global leader. So if you look at the second context, already Snehal and Nirmal is saying, hey, there's no error. It's absolutely fine. I'm sorry. So they're saying there's no error, it's absolutely fine. But let's take a closer look at it. Nirmal and Snehal, I want you to take a closer look at it, as well as Kirti. India has the potential to emerge as a global leader of growth, innovation, productivity. How? If it has the right balance of fiscal policy measures and sustained economic reforms, right? So it's like there's a cause and effect here, right? The reason is if it has the right balance of fiscal policy measures and sustained economic reforms, the effect or the consequence or the result will be that it will emerge as a global leader of growth. So here the answer is yes, Akhil and Snehal is correct. It is in part 1, right? The error is in part 1. What is this incorrect preposition to doing? To the right balance? No, it has to have. So that's why when I explained it, the meaning that the context is saying, India has to have this and this in order to emerge as a global leader, right? So the right preposition that brings in the meaning of having something, right? Either as a possession or an attribute, like a, or a characteristic, is which preposition? That's my question to you. Let's see who gets the answer right? Priya is saying for. Anybody else wants to try? Yes, thank you, Ajay. Correct. The right preposition giving us this meaning is with, not for, right? With the right balance of fiscal policy measures and sustained economic reforms, India has the potential to emerge as a global leader of growth, innovation, and productivity. There you go. Replace to with having. That's it. Nayan, correct. Right? So the error is in part 1. You change to with. There you go. Next one, climate negotiators from across the world already have begun working in pairs to stitch together a global agreement. So those of you, I think one of you asked me, right? Hey, is there a rule for every context? Yes. You will easily learn a rule in every context, and there is a rule for this context as well. I don't know how many of you know the rule, but let's first of all check out some answers. Where do you think the error is first? Climate negotiators from across the world already have begun working in pairs to stitch together a global agreement. Okay. Nayan says remove from part 1, but from here is just giving us, the source, right? The source is across the world. So it seems pretty fine there. See, if you notice, some of you are saying together is incorrect. Stitch together, which means to put together. Right? A global agreement. So there again, the meaning is intact. So there's nothing wrong with stitch together. Now, the rule that you need to know is, for this context, is pretty simple, right? Keep in mind, it's a word order error, by the way, right? The rule is you put already, which is our adverb, right, after have, has, or had. Or you can even put it at the end of the clause. end of the sentence. Right? Sometimes already goes in the beginning of the sentence. That is if you want to emphasize something. Now, the rule is this. Right? So, whether it is a be form verb, be verbs, I'm sure you know that, right? Is, am, are, was, were. Same thing. You put already after it. So, it is already dark. I'm just going to give you some example sentences. So, by now, you know where the error is. It is already dark. Or if I say tickets are already available online. Right? Are you following? Exactly. So it's a word order error. The rule is you put already after have, has, had, or at the end of a sentence. Yes, sometimes it comes before the sentence for emphasis. But in our case, the error is in part 2. You change the word order. The word have already begun. Climate negotiators from across the world have already begun. That's it. Are you following? It's as simple as that. Yes. So good to know rule, right? You will be able to quickly identify errors pertaining to word order. Let's look at our last segment for finding errors as such. It happens, Akhil. A cargo vehicle carrying a car and some goods made the first successful trial run from Kolkata to Agartala through Bangladesh, reviving a route shut from independence. Now, I just want you to apply a little bit of logic. When you look at this context, right, just understand the meaning that the context is saying. You'll be able to identify where exactly the error is. Can you take a look at it? I want you to read it slowly. Yes. Some of you are giving me the right answer. Some of you are giving me the wrong answers. Okay, let's take a look at this context closely. A cargo vehicle carrying a car and some goods made the first successful trial run from such and such a place through Bangladesh, reviving a route that was shut. Exactly, right? The error is in part. How many parts are there? 1, 2, 3, 4. It's in part 4, right? This route has been shut not from independence, right? Independence is not a source of information, is not a place, right? So it's referring to a specific event, the day India received its independence, from that time onwards. So very specific. So obviously the error is in part 4. You replace the incorrect preposition from to since independence. Since that time, this route has been shut. And now it makes more sense. So most of the time when you read the context, if you can just figure out the meaning, you'll be able to quickly identify the error, apart from obviously knowing all the rules. Right? Since independence. So I keep saying this, mostly in your finding errors, you will have errors pertaining to prepositions. And if it's prepositions, not just prepositions. I've shared another video where, about top 10 errors that you need to know. Via through is fine. It's the same meaning, Siddhartha. You don't have to change anything there for the sake of changing it. Right? So preposition errors, either it's a missing preposition or an incorrect preposition. right? Or an unnecessary preposition. Like sometimes I don't need this preposition in the context. I can remove it and the meaning is still intact. Okay, so our next question type that we're moving into, which most of you had a trouble with, is fill in the blanks, right? I understand what your trouble was and why that was your trouble, right? Just wanted to, before we get into that fill in the blanks mode, for the most part, you know, double blanks, if you can quickly apply very basic strategies without wasting time, you will be able to identify the answer. But the problem is with fill in the blanks is, if you don't know collocations, right? If the first thing that I say is, hey, look at the words in and around the blank, try and pick up collocations, right? Associated words. I'll share it with you, Mainak, after the session. After the session, I'll share it on the chat. The second one is, look for clue words in the context, right? That will also help me. And then you can, in the process, you quickly need to keep applying either elimination method or substitution method and narrow down your answer choices, right? Like get rid of wrong answer options. So that's another thing. If you're familiar with certain phrasal verbs, idioms and phrases, that will also help when it comes to fill in the blanks. LAT, just change your resolution. Yes, we do. If it's finding errors, you need to be good in your basics. If it's fill in the blanks, you need to be good with vocabulary, right? So let's move into fill in the blanks, which is another problematic area, especially when you have two or more options that can fit the blank, right? You feel, hey, this word also can go in this blank. Why not? That's where the problem is. So the trick is to identify, looking closely at the context, relying on clue words in the context to help narrow down and figure out our answer quickly. So let's take a look at fill in the blanks questions, which was challenging for you guys. Okay, so this is our first question. Let's read. The NASSCOM, which has begun a serious effort to dash the Japanese market 2 years ago, feels that India is dash well now to tap the opportunity, right? So we have 5 options. Bring it on. Okay, so we have 5 options, right? What's the first strategy? We're going to eliminate wrong answer options quickly. So in order to do that, I'm going to pay attention to words in and around the blank, right? After the second blank, before I have two, I always pay attention to prepositions in and around the blank. Okay. So I've kind of pictured these now. Now go back and let's go backwards. Okay. 5th option. India is waiting well now to tap the opportunity, which has begun a serious effort to hold the Japanese market 2 years ago. Illogical. Out. Option 4. India is minded well now to tap the opportunity. Illogical, right? And why would it want to capture? Why would it want to capture the Japanese market, right? You're following, right? Capture is to take captive or gain possession. Again, illogical. India doesn't want to capture the Japanese market, right? Out. The 3rd option. The NASSCOM, which has begun a serious effort to smash the Japanese market 2 years ago. Smash, again, in a very negative word, in the sense, whenever I think of smash, I can think of, somebody just hitting, or what do I say, striking really hard, right? It's almost like crushing or destroying completely. Now, that's not India's intention. India's intention is not to crush the Japanese market completely or destroy the Japanese market completely, right? Though qualified, meaning is pretty fine, second blank, but not the first option. Out. The NASSCOM, which has begun a serious effort to crack the Japanese market 2 years ago, feels that India is poised well now to tap the opportunity. Okay, maybe, but let's look at the first one as well. The NASSCOM, which has begun a serious effort to surpass the Japanese market 2 years ago, feels that India is adjusted well now to tap the opportunity. So we'll need to figure out between 1 and 2, right? We've narrowed down our options. We eliminated all the wrong ones, saying, hey, it doesn't logically make sense. Now let's look at 1 and 2 quickly or closely, right? The first strategy was, we said, we are going to look at words in and around the blank, eliminate wrong answer options. The second one I said is pay attention to clue words, keywords in the context, right? So it says NASSCOM began a serious effort, right? That's your a little clue phrase there. And when did it happen? 2 years ago. From 2 years ago, they've been trying to figure out a way, right? Now let's look at blank 1. Option 1 says surpass, option 2 says crack. Now, surpass means to exceed, right? It has different meanings in different contexts, right? It has a meaning of superior, being superior to someone or something, right? Mahesh may have surpassed all his classmates in academic honors, or the cost of a particular project could have surpassed the budget projections, right? So here, in this context, it's more to do with, outdoing by a large number. But crack, on the other hand, right? Crack in this context especially gives us a meaning of India was, trying to discover a solution with respect to, so the serious effort, right? Let me quickly put this down for you. So I'm going to put surpass and crack because that's where we've narrowed down our options, right? When I say you want to take a crack at something, which means you're saying to discover a solution. And in our context, we're talking about the NASSCOM was trying to discover a solution with respect to the Japanese market, and they started this serious effort 2 years ago. Makes sense. But on the other hand, if I look at surpass, right, where we spoke about so many meanings, it means exceed, it means superior to, right? Outdo, that's also another meaning. But in the context here again, let's move on to our second blank. It says, the first option says adjusted and poised. Now, poised would be a more effective word. Why? Poised means, yes, Savita's asking, right? What is the meaning of poised? Poised means you're prepared for action in this context. Prepared to take action. Right now you're balanced, you have all the right resources or manpower or whatever it is that you need to move ahead or move forward. So in the context, the more effective word is poised in the second blank, as well as crack in the first blank, right? The serious effort, it has not surpassed yet, right? And the idea is not to, of course, they want to do better than the Japanese market, but our clue words, a serious effort and 2 years ago. So they've been trying to discover a solution with respect to the Japanese market, and this effort started 2 years ago. So the more effective option is option 2 and not 1. Most of you came back and said, hey, 1, but given the context that we have and falling back on our clue phrases, the most effective word is option 2. So hopefully Savita got the meaning of poised. Let's move on. We have 4 more sentences. Let's hurry up. India is dash for space in the global marketplace with other rising dash and needs robust energy supply to compete effectively. Now, like I said, the first blank, yes, we took a lot of time because I wanted to explain the difference between the first 2 options. However, another easier way to do it, right, to save time. Look at our first option. India is bumping, India is pushing, India is squeezing, India is jostling, India is pressing. So you can quickly eliminate words that are not making sense at all, which is bumping and pushing and squeezing, right? You can quickly eliminate 1, 2, 3 just by looking at the first blank. Now, India is pressing for space, India is jostling for space. Both are correct. So we move on to our second blank. right? With other rising powers or rising potential. So understand quickly, another way to do is understanding what the context is saying. So who is India competing with, right? Compete is your clue word here in the context. Who is India competing with? Rising potential or rising powers? What's the right answer? Rising potential or rising powers? That should be your question. Right? So as soon as you answer this question, you know what the answer is. Are you following? And the answer is Mona, correct. Jostling means pushing against, right? You're struggling or you're competing forcefully. To compete forcefully. Jostling. Yeah, in our context, that's the meaning. So India is jostling for space in the global marketplace with other rising powers and need robust energy supply to compete effectively. So the answer is, so all you've had asked is, who is India competing with? You asked this question and there is your answer. Next, the rebels of the LTTE dash outright an invitation by the Sri Lankan Prime Minister to send dash proposals to end the decade-old ethnic conflict. So here again, this is not a very difficult one. I'm hoping that out of all the 5 contexts, this was the one that you were able to answer easily. Right? Your clue word being outright. You outright deny or reject something. Right? That's your collocation. You either deny or reject something outrightly. Which means what? Straight away, right? No negotiation. Straight away you do that. Openly. Outright, the meaning that it brings in the context is straight away, openly, or without any reservation. So the rebels of the LTTE rejected outright an invitation by the Sri Lankan Prime Minister to send their proposals, right? So there is referring to the proposals. That's it. Yes, it is 3. Option 3 is the right answer. Nothing else will logically fit the context. Even if you say accept it, the second blank in 4 is incorrect. And its is incorrect. Right? Because we're referring to people here. Okay, let's move on. We're almost out of time. Currently, disclosure standard of the insurance dash on both dash are inferior to those of other vehicles such as mutual funds. So we also need to remember that sometimes these fill in the blank contexts obviously are taken from a larger context, right? So we may not understand what's gone before or after because we don't have the context there in front of us. So in such cases, at least for this sort of a question type, what I'm trying to say is it's good to be familiar with collocations, right? Without wasting time, outright itself doesn't mean rejection. Outright only means without any reservation, openly doing it or completely doing something or entirely doing something, right? So don't get confused. So for a question like this, the best thing to do is collocations. Now the collocation here is on both counts. That's the collocation. If you're familiar with that collocation, you won't waste time and you'll quickly choose option 5 as the answer. Yeah? See, we don't have enough information in the given context alone to choose numbers or results or anything else. Currently, disclosure standard of the insurance industry on both counts are inferior to those of other vehicles such as mutual funds. On both counts, meaning either affecting or involving one or the other, right? That's what I'm saying. For sometimes context like this, there could be a preceding sentence referring to or making reference to two pointers that have been discussed. But we don't know that. We don't have that information here. So in that case, it's safer to go with a generic collocation, which is on both counts. Areas, regions, numbers, results. We don't have enough information given the context. Currently, disclosure standard of the insurance. See, all of these, business, management, corporation, industry, everything goes. But Alok, the only problem with such a question is the preceding sentence and the following sentence is not there for us. So if you ask me, right, if you ask me, it's better to skip this question. I'll tell you why. Because most of the answers can go. Right? It's not a good question, actually, if you ask me, because it is important for me to have a context to be able to pick a word to complete this blank. Because yes, Saurabh, all look correct. Absolutely. If you look up this particular sentence, right? If you look up the source of this sentence, I'm sure there is a preceding sentence making reference to two points where both those components are affected. And that's why on both counts would be a safer bet. But you may not want to take the risk of going with a generic collocation, which is on both counts, and then get a wrong answer. But my bet is I usually do that, but it's a risk that you would take. So my suggestion would be to skip a question like this, because it's not a very intelligent question to place without enough information. All I'm trying to say is this context does not have ample information for me to choose the right option. So I would skip this. Just the expression on both counts, yes, which means affecting or involving one and the other. So if I say, I agree with you on both counts, which means on both those factors, whatever that we were discussed or we were discussing earlier. Or if I say, I believe Sri Ram is right on both counts. So maybe we discussed one thing earlier and then we're discussing another thing now. And I'm saying, hey, this person, Sri Ram, was right on both the accounts, whatever we discussed earlier as well as what we're discussing now, right? So not a very intelligent question because we don't have enough context to choose the options. I would suggest you skip. The last one, Bhutan landlocked and dash between Sikkim and Arunachal Pradesh has significant dash for hydropower production. So here again, we're going to closely look at words in and around the blank, maybe look for clue words in the context, right? Let's eliminate options first. Let's go from the back, right? Bhutan landlocked and inserted between Sikkim and Arunachal Pradesh. Now, inserted, right, the immediate collocation that comes to my mind is You can, like insert a key in the lock, right? That's the first thing that comes into my mind. Right? And again, source, the second blank. Now, Bhutan is the source. So you can't say Bhutan has significant source for hydropower production. Bhutan is the source that they're talking about. They're saying, hey, this place is capable of hydropower production. So I will eliminate option 5 because second blank and the first blank, both the words are an illogical fit. What about fourth one? Bhutan landlocked and situated between Sikkim and Arunachal Pradesh is situated. Why not? First blank, it makes sense. Has significant dominance for hydropower production. Now, the second blank, the second word dominance, right? When I say dominance, the collocation with dominance is not for, right? It's always dominance over something. When you say dominance, you're saying the power or the right to either make decisions or give orders, blah, 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 whatever it is, right? So it's always dominance over. Let me give you example sentences. So if I say they are unpopular for their dominance over the community. Okay. His random example sentences is ego and sense of dominance over her is unbelievable, right? So not the right collocation. Not dominance for, but dominance over, out. Though situated is the right fit. Third one, interjected power. Interject, that word, right? Again, significant power for hydropower production is very redundant, the second word. Interject, when I say interject, I'm saying interrupt, right? Oops. Interject is more to do with interrupt, introduce, right? Those are the meanings. So you can interject clever remarks, right? You can interject, you can introduce a particular word, right? So again, it doesn't make sense. Option 3 out. Option 2, Bhutan landlocked and placed between Sikkim and Arunachal Pradesh has role. What's missing? Again, a collocation. When you're using significant role, yes, those two words go together. But what is missing? Has a significant role, right? So the construction is not correct. The construction or the collocation is a significant role. What's missing? The definite article, right? A major role. So what are we left with? Option A. Another way to do it is, a quick way to do it is, pay attention to this and synonym hint word. Right? And what's this word? Landlocked. That's your clue word. What's landlocked? Landlocked means? Anybody? Landlocked. Landlocked means shut in completely. Right? Let me put it here. Landlocked means shut in completely. By land, obviously. Right? So you're surrounded entirely or almost. So imagine this word. And so you need to pick a word that is expressing or giving out the same meaning as landlocked. Something where, like a sandwich, sandwiched, wherein it's whatever you've put in your sandwich is completely covered. It's shut in there. That's another way to go about it. Bhutan, landlocked and sandwiched between Sikkim and Arunachal Pradesh, has significant potential, right? Potential means capable of. So this place is capable of hydropower production. There you go, that's your answer, option 1 and not option 2, Vaishnavi. Are you following? So basically what I'm trying to say is either we pay attention to words in and around the blank, or we focus on clue words, or we quickly know how to eliminate wrong answer options. If we are familiar with collocations or phrases that usually people use, right? So and so has a significant rule, a major rule. So that was it for today's session, right? I hope you guys were able to kind of follow the strategies. The best part is we have time, so we can practice, right? If you're saying, ma'am, I have a problem with fill in the blanks, it's very difficult and I can't afford to spend so much time in the exam. Yes, of course, you can't afford to spend so much time in the exam. That's why you practice now, right? Make sure that you get familiar with as many collocations as possible. And every time you practice a particular question, you come up with, or you learn a new rule, right? That's the best part. So before I leave though, quickly wanted to, reiterate that you can continue to obviously take advantage of these free sessions, which will happen every Wednesdays at 6 o'clock, right? And those of you who want to follow context, right? Like some of you come in and like, what's happening? What's going on? We expect you to have taken the mock test, right? So do that. And those of you who haven't done it yet, just log on to www.talentsprint.com/mocktest2017, right? You'll be given a username and password. You can log in, take the test, take advantage of some free videos as well. You can join the WhatsApp group, right? So somebody posted the number as well, so you can go ahead and do that. And subscribe to our channel, because we're going to be giving you tips and strategies, daily dose on what to do and how should you plan your preparation for this exam. Okay, so this week, again, which is what, 26th? Yes, 25th and 26th, right? The All India mock exam is scheduled to happen during that time. So make sure you take it, and we will see you guys explaining quantitative aptitude, right? That'll be the next session, next Wednesday on the 1st, explaining some more challenging question types. All right, so great participation, and keep practicing and stay focused more than anything, right? Have a good rest of the evening, and see you guys soon. Take care.